Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Hugh's Reviews, the place for movie views and spoiler clues. One thing you should know about me by now is that I'm in this game to review movies, not to suck up to people. I'm honest, brutally so at times, and I'm not going to pull punches for good or ill just because someone recommends a movie to me. I ripped apart my mother-in-law's favorite film, The Notebook. I praised parts of The Last Jedi in spite of the nerd community's rage, and if you suggest a movie to me, I'm gonna go in open-minded, but I ain't gonna tell it like it ain't. That's basically what I told a friend of mine when they asked me to review Julia Hart's Fast Color, a low-budget superhero drama film from 2018, which, to be honest, I'd never even heard of. I like to go into a movie cold. No trailers, no preconceptions, just watch the movie and see what happens, how I feel about it as a movie, how the final product was put together, and that's it. I don't care about billion-dollar ad campaigns or flashy giveaways. I care about the movie itself. Does it impress me, or does it suck? And Fast Color does both. The only thing I'd ever heard about this movie, and that about 5 hours before I watched it, was that apparently it had good reviews, but that people were accusing the studio of racism and patriarchy due to its limited release and crappy marketing. Well, okay. So, going in, I had only one question. Were those accusations justified, or were the slings and arrows misplaced? Turns out, they were misplaced. Let's start at the beginning and go from there. Fast Color is the story of a family imbued with superhuman abilities living in secret. For a dozen generations, they have hidden their power from the world at large, knowing that to reveal their true nature would invite suspicion, violent backlash, and now, in the modern age, governmental attention. Our introduction into this world is Ruth, a drifter whose backstory and motivations I wouldn't dare to reveal. I'll just say she's scared, alone, on the run, and has ample reasons to be so. Returning eventually to her childhood home, she must confront an embittered mother, a painful past, and a child she abandoned and has never known. Well, this is a great setup to take the bloated superhero genre at a sideways angle and get really intimate and down to earth. But as the movie goes on, you find that in spite of the soulful intent, the film finds itself retreading familiar ground better fleshed out in other films. I respect that the powers the women here hold are only a gimmick, a backdrop to deeper, more personal issues. This is not a movie so much about superpowers, but about family, fear, abandonment, the fragility of life. It uses superpowers as a metaphor for brokenness and reconciliation and climate change and social change. Man, that's a brilliant idea. Unfortunately, it's presented in a way that vacillates poorly between the expected and the spectacular and never quite finds the proper balance between the extremes. A fellow viewer commented that she found herself alternating between intense interest and indifferent boredom. I'd have to agree. The fault here must lie, I feel, with director Julia Hart, and not with the screenplay by Hart and co-writer Jordan Horowitz, the acting, or any other aspect. The ideas are solid and the emotional intent is obvious, but the execution is somewhat uneven. Martin Pence's editing of Michael Fiminari's cinematography is evocative and brings to mind great recent and historic works in both the comic book genre and dramatic genres, most notably 2017's Logan. The desolate atmosphere, the look inward at the human beings involved as opposed to over-sensationalizing the powers those people wield, it's intriguing in a deeply personal way. But where Logan made you care about the respective characters even if you knew nothing of them from previous iterations, Fast Color fails to make you care about the individuals involved beyond the surface level. And if you don't care about the people, then how can you care about their struggles? That's not to say that the effort isn't there. The acting ranges from great to almost decent, and the characters have a lot going on, both outwardly and under the surface. You can really tell that as you watch. But you can't help but notice that the cliches played out in their relationships have been done a million times before and done better elsewhere. Gugu Mbatha-Raw plays Ruth, the woman running from the tragic past. Lorraine Toussaint is her overprotective mother, and Sania Sidney is Ruth's estranged daughter. When they're reunited, they go through the motions of Ruth trying to mend her broken relationship with her mother and get to know the daughter she abandoned, and it's also expected. If it weren't for the supernatural elements of the story, it'd almost be a paint-by-numbers family drama. Even when shocking revelations rear their heads, no one is particularly shocked because you can see them coming from a mile away. And every time the film jumps back to the government agents chasing Ruth, it's jarring and feels like those scenes were inserted after the fact when they realized they didn't have an exciting enough climax. Even then, the movie doesn't so much have a climax as it just peters out. the melodramatic and artistic overtones falling flat regardless of the self-importance the writer and the directors tried to imbue the film with. There was a TV series based on the film that began production in 2019, but honestly, I can't imagine that a story that tired itself out after 102 minutes could be made compelling for a full television season. The movie as it stands is just barely okay. So, now to address the accusations that the film didn't get much support due to patriarchy or racism. While I admit that might have played a minor role in the lack of attention the film received, after watching the movie and doing some research, I think it goes a lot deeper than that. For one, though Lionsgate and Code Black Films acquired the rights in late 2018, by the time they were gearing up for the theatrical release in 2019, Lionsgate had already cut ties with Code Black, and that meant that there were no more deep pockets to plumb for marketing capital. If they were going to go to theaters and not straight to DVD, they had to do it on a shoestring budget. Not a promising start. And even if they had more cash to push the movie, think about the competition. While it is technically a superpower movie, it lacks any kind of the flash or bang that is usually associated with the genre. Like I said, it's mainly a low-budget, lackluster family drama, released smack dab in the middle of a Marvel vs. DC multi-billion-dollar cash war. Hey, it's not that I don't admire small-budget dramatic films, but think about how theaters would have looked at the movie from a profit perspective. Look up the overwhelming flood of superhero properties that were released in 2018 and 2019. Marvel and DC were duking it out on the big screen with big names and budgets more bloated than some small countries. Cable TV and streaming services had dozens of shows fighting for viewership, some of which got more push than this film and still flopped. And while Fast Color did get an extremely pathetic limited release, there were a lot of other projects with bigger names and more marketability that were released straight to streaming with even less fanfare than Fast Color got. To be honest, the movie might have done far better to be released straight to streaming with no limited theatrical release and a tightly targeted art house cult classic ad campaign. One theory that I have is that while the studio was willing to take a chance on making the movie, no one thought about how exactly they were going to market the thing. Which is a sadly common short-sighted practice that scuttles movies of all sorts, regardless of the cast's gender or racial makeup. Thousands of movies a year languish in what is derisively referred to as development hell and never even receive a release of any kind. They just sit there, partially formed masterpieces in the making, gathering dust in some warehouse like the Ark of the Covenant. And many of those have more potential for profit than Fast Color. No, I don't think it was patriarchy or racism. It was a combination of the studio split, the movie not turning out as good as it could have, and the inability to find a place for an uneven, muddled mixture of a movie that would have to, sadly, take a big backseat to other movies of similar types that were guaranteeing bigger paydays. And as far as it not getting much attention in the press, think of it this way. Parasite, a small-budget, very weird movie made in South Korea featuring no white cast members, which was released without any English dubbing, got such incredible word of mouth due to its brilliance that it became an underground hit here in the States, and a limited number of theaters wound up picking it up just because people were talking about how good it was, not to mention the Oscar glory that rained down on it. Word of mouth can take a tiny film with next to no marketing and turn it into a smash. If Fast Color had made more of an impact on audiences, then that word would have gotten around, and the buzz alone would have demanded a bigger release and recognition. But it didn't, and even many of us who spend their time looking for weird little movies to watch didn't hear about it until now. Racism and patriarchy? Maybe? But considering the mostly C+ reactions from audiences that did see it and the pro critics giving it barely a B+, isn't it also possible the movie was just not worth major financial backing? Look, I want more minority representation in film, but if we're gonna get there, then those films have to be so good that the patriarchal racists in the studio system literally cannot ignore them. You can't stop at having a half-clever concept or the idea of casting a woman or casting a person of color. The movie also has to be really good. So good, it shuts down the doubters. What we need to do is prove those guys wrong and make a great movie. It's not fair, and mediocre movies abound and do get more push, but the fight is worth it, and if the film is good enough, no one can take away from you the glory of proving that yes, we can. So, Fast Color. I'm glad I watched it. I'm happy to give it a little bit more recognition. After all, critics are often wrong, and films that flop wind up becoming legendary when released for home viewing. Wizard of Oz, Princess Bride, Shawshank Redemption, It's a Wonderful Life. Everybody's seen them, right? These all received lukewarm to hateful initial releases and were thrown in the dumpster by the studios only to become legends later once people saw them at home. And there was something special about fast color that you could almost, but not quite, see hanging around the edges. A more gifted director and a few more drafts of the screenplay might have helped tighten everything up, but I guess we'll never know. As it is, Fast Color is an acceptable film that regretfully failed to rise to greatness. But give it a watch and let me know what you think. Well, that's it for now from Hugh's Reviews. Many thanks to our underwriters at Moons of Vega Photography and Slice Print Roleplay. And thanks to Elena for the movie request. If you have a movie you'd like me to review, hit me up on YouTube or drop me a line at WXPI Radio of Williamsport. And as always, happy viewing!